So good evening all. Okay. So there are 3 questions today, I believe. See the first question for the day, and all the 3 questions are by and large related to the terrorism. So it is international security related with international security. So see the first question and give the framework. Analyze the complexity and intensity of terrorism, its causes, linkages, and obnoxious nexus. See the question again. Analyze the complexity and intensity of terrorism, its causes, linkages, and obnoxious nexus, and also suggest measures required to be taken to eradicate the menace of terrorism. So very recent question. So question with lot of dimensions. Think carefully and give the framework. Yeah. Yeah. Bhaskar. Rajni. Good. Bhaskar, yes. You can briefly describe the terrorism. Then what is the second dimension of the question? So the complexity and intensity of terrorism you can definitely mention. Then will be the causes, linkages, and the nexus, and then give the measures and the way forward. Good. So you can see the demand of the question is across wide spectrum, and such questions, though they are 2 or 3 lines, you need to have the dimensions clearly in your mind. If you are going to miss any one part, and you may have written a brilliant answer. See, actually the answer for this question is not at all tough. Let me be honest. If I write the answer, you write the answer, anyone writes the answer, the content is going to match for 80 to 90%. The same things we'll write, because what are the causes of terrorism? What is terrorism? What is the complexity, intensity? What is the nexus? What are the measures to eradicate? Every one of us know. Any serious aspirant for mains will be knowing this. The problem is you have to attempt all the dimensions of the question. Unless you are not doing that, you are losing marks. For example, if it's a 15-marker question, you might have written measures very well. If you are not writing causes and linkages, you will straight away lose 5 marks. Hence, be extremely careful while answering these kind of questions, because content wise they are very easy, but you have to answer various dimensions. So coming here, what are the various dimensions? The first is the terrorism. So what is terrorism? Basically, it is a illegal warfare. If something which is done by the state is called war, but terrorism is illegal usage of violence or force against the state. In general, it is against the state or the people, and the force which is being used is illegal or not recognized. It is not like a nation is fighting with nation. It is some pseudo element or some XYZ is fighting with a nation. So hence, the terrorism is an illegal war or illegal use of force. Okay, then what else you can write? That is the definition of terrorism. Then what are the complexity and intensity of the terrorism? What is the complexity? The terrorism is like spread over regions. The complexity is spread over because it is spread over regions. If you take the case of ISIS, it is recruiting people across the world, and it operates in a very secretive way, like sleeper cells. We do not know who are terrorists and who are not. And then it is complex because it is not a systematic force. It is like a guerrilla warfare. Fedayeen attacks. The terrorists are ready to take off their lives for creating the havoc. So that kind of attitude is there. Hence it becomes complex, and it is integrated or it is spread over multiple countries, and it doesn't have any particular what do you call it? Any geographic territory as such. Hence it is complex. And then what is intensity? Intensity is huge because it is creating havoc. It is creating loss of life of public, loss of property, human trafficking, drug trafficking. All these are the impact of terrorism. The intensity of terrorism is huge because terrorism as a particular threat to the global peace is increasing day by day. And number of terrorist groups are increasing, and hence the intensity of terrorism is more. And next, come to the next part, causes of terrorism. Mainly the causes of terrorism. What are the causes of terrorism? Underdevelopment of a country, religious fundamentalism, no proper employment, creation of pseudo wars by the countries. That is also one important aspect of cause for terrorism. Ethnic identities. And finally, poverty. So these are some of the reasons or causes for terrorism. So what are the linkages and obnoxious nexus? What do you mean by obnoxious nexus? Dangerous nexus. What is nexus? It is going hand in hand, the relationship between various agencies. So what are the linkages and obnoxious nexus? Terrorism is linked with the global peace. So it is causing a disturbance to global law and order through crimes. And then terrorism is linked with human trafficking, drug mafia, money laundering. So this is the obnoxious nexus of terrorism with other issues. And terrorism is also dictating terms to many countries and their governments. And some governments are secretly supporting terrorism. Those are called state-sponsored terrorism. That is also an obnoxious nexus. So these are the linkages. Then what are the measures required to eradicate the menace of terrorism? First is the international cooperation. First line you have to write international cooperation. Then development, sensitization of youth, de-radicalization, proper boundary management, border management, cutting the access to the terrorist organization, cutting the financial access to the terrorist organization, countering the religious fundamentalism, the FATF, OECD, involving international law and order agencies like Interpol. All these are important aspects of eradicating, and within nation development, addressing the poverty and underdevelopment, so on and so forth. So these are the important aspects in such required to be taken to eradicate the menace of terrorism. And then conclude saying that terrorism is like an ulcer to the world peace. If allowed to propagate, it will create a very big impact in the law and order of the world. The need of the hour is that various nations should come together and address this issue, and also the countries which are sponsoring the state-sponsored terrorism should concentrate on development. And only when there is a united effort in mitigating this issue, there will be a solution to this global disorder. Clear? Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
You have straight away come to causes. You have to write the complexity and intensity, Renuka. Renuka, you are in the class? Okay, the causes are good. Okay, you have written causes and linkages and obnoxious nexus. Okay. Good. Measures. You can write few more measures as we have discussed. Okay. India should play a proactive role, not necessary. India is already playing a very proactive role. The need of the hour is the entire world should stand together against this menace. Okay. Of course, India is playing an active role, no doubt about it, but the entire world also should come together and address this issue. So see the content wise, I have not given anything which is very abnormally different from what you people know. But then the key demand of the question is the presentation and not missing any part of the question. If you are missing any part of the question, you are losing marks. See the 33rd question. The scourge of terrorism is a grave challenge to national security. Okay. What solutions do you suggest to curb this growing menace? What are the major sources of terrorist funding? 33rd is a subset of 32nd. The question of 33 is a subset question of 32nd. In fact, 32nd question was much wider, much bigger question. 33rd is a very, very simple question. Just try it. Yeah. Now someone explain me the 33rd answer. Now that you have seen the 32nd question and the answer for it, anyone take up the 33rd and answer? The scourge of terrorism is a grave challenge to the national security. What solution do you suggest to curb this growing menace? What are the major sources of terrorist funding? Then you have to obviously give the solution. They are asking you the solution, sources of terrorist funding, and then finally the conclusion. Yes, Rajni, the structure is fine. Tell me what are the points you will be writing. Anyone can volunteer. Who wants to volunteer?
Sir, am I audible?
Okay, Suman, tell me.
Yes, sir. Intro, just to make it look a little different, but still sound relevant. I would write the intro like this. The country's experience of multiple bomb blasts and irreparable collateral damage, along with loss of precious lives of innocent civilians, proves that this is a challenge which cannot be ignored anymore. This would be intro, sir. And embody solutions to curb this menace. I'll divide the page into two parts. One is security measures, other is developmental measures. Under security measures, first comes the effective intelligence gathering. Next, interoperability between various security agencies, combating the threat with state-of-art weapons, and choking the funding of terrorist organizations by breaking the obnoxious nexus. Next, ensuring that combat operations do not involve any collateral damage. Next, de-radicalization, scientific principle driven counseling of youth, and building an international consensus to neutralize state-sponsored terrorism in specific. And developmental measures, sir. political power devolution, next quick grievance redressal, proactive public service delivery, development of social infrastructure and public infrastructure, employment generation, and making the terrorism affected areas, the people in terrorism affected areas as partners in governance, and and also financial inclusion. Next,
Wait, 1 minute,
next
1 minute.
dimension
Hold
is,
on. What do you mean by terrorism affected areas? Are there anything called terrorism affected areas?
so terrorism affected areas as in from where the uh, from where this where the youth are being radicalized. For example, Kashmir, uh, and I mean other southern Kerala, and few districts in Assam, where the concentration of these radicalized camps is observed more. In the the terrorism affected areas, I mean those areas. Sir. Maybe I should have used a different word, but so by those areas, I mean that, sir.
So here,
Sir, yeah.
yeah, go on, tell me.
Yes, sir. And next dimension we must address is the sources of funding, which is drug mafia, hawala rackets, vested interest business groups, few external state-sponsored terrorism. These are the sources of funding. And conclusion would be the need of the hour is multi-pronged approach with effective interoperability among various agencies and strong political will to develop to deepen the benefits of development. Uh,
Okay, anyone wants to add or remove anything from the Sumant's answer?
Yes, sir. More or less I was done. My network just got disconnected.
Today we have enough time because we have only 3 questions and all the 3 questions are similar in nature. So we can have more interactive session. So Sumant has given certain answer. Anyone wants to add or remove something from his answer? Any part of his answer is slightly not relevant to the question, or anything which you want to add to his answer? Anyone? Sriram?
Sir.
Yeah. You listen, Sumant?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, you tell me what is your answer for this.
Sir, we can rather than going at a very this scale, we can go in a world and do some examples like Syria, Iraq, and also Afghanistan, like where there is always a not proper governance systems or unstable government leading to terrorist groups for encouragement, sir. Like ISIS in Syria and all. Even state-sponsored terrorism, example like Pakistan, or sir, can we write the example of US funding ISIS, Taliban? Are
there any proofs for that?
Then what we can then also we cannot write that Pakistan is funding ISIS, Al Qaeda or all groups.
We can write state-sponsored terrorism. That we can write.
Yeah, sir. State-sponsored terrorism is like a generic word, no, sir. Example will make more sense.
If you want to write, you can write the example of Pakistan.
That's okay, sir.
Only Pakistan.
That's what my doubt is. Yeah, sir. That's what, because Pakistan also we don't have standard proofs, right? Other than Pakistan is present in grey list. Even Iran, I think Iran is also on the grey list. Can we example.
Yeah, see, actually, here the one part of the question is about the challenge to the national security. Okay, but Suman,
Yeah.
you have answered it in a very detailed way, assuming that terrorism is the problem similar to Naxalism. Okay, your answer, terrorism, Naxalism, militancy and insurgency, all these are different. Terrorism is a global issue. Naxalism is a purely local issue. Insurgency is an issue between one or two nations. Militancy is an induced issue. Are you able to appreciate the difference between these terminologies?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you have to mitigate the poverty mitigation should be at the global level. Okay, because terrorism is not having its roots in India. Like say Naxalism, there is a red corridor, but there is nothing called terrorist impacted state or country, because the terrorists are recruiting through dark web throughout the country. Only that we are able to hear or know that there are certain vulnerable states. Are you clear, Suman? There are certain vulnerable states which you have taken example like Kashmir, Kerala or some states. These are vulnerable states because the youth in these states are being radicalized through dark web and being recruited by the terrorist organizations. So the counter radicalization should happen in these vulnerable states. That you can write. Okay. And then terrorism, how it is creating a national security issue to India, you can write, because it is taking away precious lives, creating and destroying a lot of prominent national property, diverting the energies of youth. All these, and creating a impact on nation's reputation, economy. All these are the counterproductive things because of the terrorism. And then what are the solutions you write? Solutions are again same. At national level, yes, you write one or two points that the youth should be de-radicalized, the sensitization should happen, the education, moral education system. You should incorporate that moral values. Yes, Jitendra, we can write UN-backed comprehensive convention on international terrorism. That is one of the ways of curbing the terrorism menace, cutting down the funding, money laundering, all these shell companies, all these you can write. And other funding, they are in this ISIS is even selling petrol in the black market, where it got access to the crucial oil fields in the Syria region. They are even selling the petrol. So all these are major issues. And then how to cut the sources of terrorist funding, you should write. And then conclude by saying the same thing. You can conclude by saying the need of the hour is the UN-backed comprehensive convention on international terrorism, where all the stakeholders, especially the United Nations, should bring all the countries on a table and then settle this issue once and for all. In this process, you can write examples which are quite evident. State-sponsored terrorism. We write example Pakistan, that's all. Pakistan is sponsoring which terrorist group, we don't know. Write the example. But when you're writing about big countries like USA, and you don't write on here and say. Okay? Because Pakistan's state-sponsored terrorism, why we are writing? Because even organizations like FATF has clearly warned Pakistan not to support terrorist groups. So there is a concrete statement made in the international forums. Yeah, you can write about the software cyber terrorism also. You can say the terrorism is taking new shapes in the form of cyber terrorism. And also you can say that the way forward is the digital terrorism or the cyber terrorism. So we have to be prepared. The conventions also should be including the cyber terrorism part. And then conclude. Clear? Navya, you have written only the first question. Okay. Okay, first question was good, Navya. Who is this Kedarnath? Kedarnath, you also written first question only? Why is that everyone has written first question only? Anyone whose answer sheet was not evaluated and written other questions? Yes. Second question you have written, Rajni. Good. Sources of terrorist funding are good. Solution. Good answer, Rajni. You have covered almost all the points. Okay. Then maybe you can conclude that the need of the hour is to bring the international organizations, through international organizations, all the nations should come together and address this global issue. Clear?
Yes, sir.
See the 34th and the last question for today. Hot pursuit and surgical strikes are often used in connection with armed action. Discuss the strategic impact of such actions. So you have to give the positive aspects and negative aspects, as simple as that. Look at this question. Yeah, so I was just looking at all your answers. Okay, good. I can see that some of you are writing good answers. Okay, and with regard to the 34th question, okay, so on a overall note, I have seen all the answers at the macro level, right? Whoever have submitted today's answers, okay, right from Jitender, Raghu, Venkateshwari, then Kedar, Arvind, Prashanti, Bhaskar, Vasavi, Jitender, Sriram, Saumya, Sumant, Rajni, Indu. So good, you are all writing good answers. Some of you have attempted only 1 or 2 questions. Okay, so that's why I was just connected out of connect, not connected to the screen. So today, since we have time in the class, I have gone through all the answer sheets and yeah, by and large, the feedback for all of you is the same. Like some of you are writing good answers. Some of you are, like making points, but you need to elaborate more. Okay. And then definitely one good thing I've noticed is most of you are applying the feedback I'm giving. So it's really good. Some of you are trying that, the bone diagrams or these diagrams and all. That is also good approach. Anyhow, so good. And then good to see that so many people have answered the question paper today. Okay, I've seen all the answers, and then good. Right. So for this question also, it's a very simple thing. You have to define the terms hot pursuit and surgical strikes. So what do you mean by hot pursuit? Anyone? Some of you have written definition. I could see that Sriram has written the definition. Okay. So hot pursuit you have written, and then you have written what is surgical strike. So good. So if you are able to differentiate at that level as to what is hot pursuit and what is surgical strike, it's a very good thing. That shows, so it's basically an urgent and direct pursuit of the law enforcement officers. That is what your Sriram has written. Okay, so it's a very close definition and acceptable thing also. Surgical strike, we all know, it is a targeted immediate strike on a certain area or a certain organization to eliminate that. Okay. And then what are the strategic implications of this particular attack? So as I said, you can write the positive aspects and the negative aspects. And then some of you have written that also. What are the positive aspects of this? Positive aspects of the strategic impact. So strategic impact means the relations and the military aspects. Okay, what are the military aspects? And you can talk about the global also. So as far as the military is concerned, we have demonstrated that we are now not going to keep quiet if someone is going to cross our border and cause havoc. So we have crossed the border, we have done the surgical strikes and come back. So that shows our military capability, our change in approach towards the issue of terrorism, and also the launch pads of terrorism. We are going to destroy them. Okay. So, and then it will give a global picture that, we are a strong supporters for any cause which is against terrorism. And it also shows our military might to the neighbor or the enemy. So these are the positive parts of the strategic impact. And it also boosts the morale of our army, because army will be motivated that yes, government is allowing us to do such things. On the other side, it will create a similar tendency in the opposition camp, create an image in the global world order that we are trying to be the aggressor. Okay. And it will have diplomatic consequences, like, the Indian consulates being called in those particular countries and warned by the governments and so on and so forth. And then at the United Nations level, there will be pressure on the India that why they have crossed this so-called border, and then why they have gone into Pakistan and created this attack on the terrorist groups. So these are the offshoots, the other side. Okay. And the other thing may be, now the revenge mode may be there, and the nations will be in perpetual war also sometimes. But in the conclusion, you can mention that this was much needed. Yes, can divert for diplomatic channel for quick gains. Yes. And the conclusion, you can say that this policy change was much needed because we were trying to be a spectator for too long and getting impacted, because India is a victim of terrorism. So we are getting impacted by that, and hence we are now trying to be proactive. It is not that we are trying to be aggressor, we are trying to be proactive. This is the difference between aggression and being proactive. In this case, we are proactive because we know that launch pad is right beside there, and those fellows are hatching a plan to create law and order issue in India. Why we have to keep quiet? So we have gone and destroyed them and came back. So that is one thing. So we can write in a positive way and say that the surgical strike can be done only in the rarest of rare cases and need based, because surgical strike cannot be a routine practice, then it cannot be called surgical strike. There is an element of surprise in surgical strike. So if it is happening every now and then, it is not called surgical strike. Okay, that is a thing. Is it clear? So for this question, I have seen all the answers, and I've seen Sriram's answer also. So he has written good answer for this. See, so introduction about hot pursuit, what is surgical strike, and then strategic implications. See, what are the positive aspects of strategic implications? So, and then what are the negative implications? Okay, and then conclusion. In the conclusion, maybe Sriram, you can write in a slightly different way that why the surgical strike should be, because we are definitely supporting surgical strike, but it should not be a common practice, because then the moment we do surgical strike, the opposition will start using the tactical nuclear weapons. Then what will be the way forward? It will be very difficult, right? So we have to maintain that the surgical strike,
yes, sir,
is rarest of rare thing. It cannot be done. And then for tackling terrorism, always go by the international order. You have to bring more countries on board. That's all. There is no other option. India alone cannot fight terrorism. It is a victim of terrorism. It is doing its best to promote the awareness about terrorism, being a vocal critic in UNSC, in FATF, in OECD, in G20, everywhere, even in Shanghai Cooperation Agreement Organization, SCO, BRICS, everywhere India is speaking about the impact of terrorism. But India alone can do only little. So we have to say that the global consensus is need of the hour. Everyone should agree, boss. Yes, terrorism is a havoc. Not only Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi. Okay. Good. So today I had an opportunity to go through the scripts, and good to see, everyone writing decent answers, especially for the first answer. I think almost everyone have written really good answers. Good. And then keep that going and keep writing answers regularly. Okay, because that is the need of the hour. And for people, I keep saying, for people who are already writing decent answers, whatever model answers we are discussing, if your answers are in line with that, if your content is in line with that, next concentrate on presentation part, how to present your answers. If you want to try something, you can try, like, if you want to try a fishbowl diagram, you can do that. If you want to draw a flow chart, you can do that. You can experiment only in the mocks. Only while experimenting, what is the strength and weaknesses, and don't go by what is done by some XYZ. If someone is doing a diagram, it may or may not work out to you. Your strength may be different. So keep trying. Yeah, Rajni, Ramana sir will be announcing it very soon. So I think it will be a combination of history and another module. So Ramana sir will be announcing the next module. It will be very soon. You will be given, as it is, 2 or 3 days break, and again we'll start. Okay. Right. So on that note, fine. Let's meet again. Good night.